they are really cranking up. The rhetoric and things are generally not looking good, right? They aren't. Well, as far as public structure is concerned, it's almost like they're rushing to get everything in place, to set some things up that, well, are going to impact all of us. I'm going to give you guys this note, though. Please remember, we live in a time where things that seem right are incredibly wrong, and things that seem like they would be wrong are incredibly right. Men are calling things that are righteous evil, right? Good evil and evil good. We live in those times. It's very evident. There's a lot of sensor data going off here. I mean, a lot. We have a lot of sensor data. We have alarms. We have many alarms today. So lots of things are waking up. These birth pains, right? These contractions, let's call them contractions, are becoming pretty rough. And tell you guys what is not good at all is some of the magma movement in these isolated places. Not good at all. We had a discussion one time of what people could expect should places like these new volcanoes, right, that are waking up, are really causing some problems, like Iceland. I'd say you don't want a volcano to go off in Iceland, right? That's a very tender spot for the entire northern and 3/4 of the southern hemisphere. It's a very dangerous spot for those who go off in, and that will affect the rest of the planet big time. It's going to affect us big time. So I'm really not sure of just how much. I know right now the alarms are going off, and underneath the ground, sensors are recording some enormous magma movement. So there's activity in the earth that's, we've not had this activity before. And the USGS recorded, or had a few calls late last night, of cattle being burned up. And so, those things are being investigated. But we're looking at some very interesting times here. Very dangerous times. And it's partly, we're going to have a responsibility here to make sure everything is as accurate as we can get it. There's no room for speculation because things are becoming dangerous. What normally happens is when you have these geological problems, or any problem for that matter, when life is lost, there's no room for error or mistaken speech. And so we're going to do our best not to have a mistaken speech or mistakes in data or mistakes in locations, because this is becoming important. And suppose an area, we find at COT that an entire area is under siege, starting underground, and they may have hours before magma breaches the surface. Well, we need to have everything here crisp so that if we happen to put out some type of alarm, it's going to be taken seriously and people will react appropriately. Not to think that we're sensationalizing anything. That we don't need. And things are, well, it's happening just like that. We have 3 new places on the earth that seem to be drawing. They're highly magnetic. To a degree, and they're pulling rocks in from space. 3 spots on the earth. That implies likely we're getting close to that jet stream reversal. I know that meteorologists, they can't go into areas like this. Those guys are paid, right? So they're going to stay within parameters of what their bosses are going to have them in. We, however, can go to, we can go into detail here, right? So we have those things covered, and Italy is having a bad problem right now. Some of their surveys have indicated that ground temperatures are fluctuating as far as their rises. within hours, no longer months. It used to be months, but now they have peaks that happen within hours. Melting concrete, asphalt melting, people's homes starting to lean because underneath the ground there's something smoldering and it breaches, then it cools back off. And what that implies is a lot of magma is moving underground. And so we're really going to have to narrow down some of this. So we're going to have a talk tonight about some of these issues, and it'll be somewhat interactive because it requires just about all of us to come up with some strategy, right, for the body of Christ that listens to us, to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to keep people in the know about these things. The world is not going to report it. There are things happening today that, because the majority of folks can't see it, and those folks in that area, they don't have internet service. They haven't had internet service in 2 weeks. They're just not saying anything, right? Not saying anything unless you happen to venture in one of those areas. Then you get turned around, but they're not saying anything, not a thing. So we're going to cover some things tonight. People are having. Here's one thing I want you guys to understand: as we change, as the Earth's magnetosphere changes, as it's being inundated with radiation, the nature of your dreams are going to change. Your brain is responsible for creating quite a few things. It is almost like a feedback mechanism for your soul. And as we encounter these instabilities in the magnetosphere, you can expect very sporadic dreams, but also something else. Something on the spiritual side you can expect. You can really expect. Now, I don't know if you guys really thought of this, but for a lot of people, dreams change their days, right? Whether they be insightful or not, dreams can change your life. If the Lord sends one, or if you have one of those vivid dreams you really remember, and they are so strange and outside of the box for you, they're going to change the way you do things. You have to be careful of that too, because people seem to be, some people are being, intruded upon in their dreams, and it's starting to really take a toll, fatigue them as far as their thoughts. It's degrading them as far as their work ethic and, many more things. So there's several areas of physiology we're going to cover too, because these changes are going to be amplified, right? There will come a time when people operate in a type of madness. That seems to be happening already. The nature of crimes is changing. It's almost like people are snapping into this fantasy world, trying their best to ignore everything that happens, with all their might. To me, that's irresponsible, right? You can still have joy knowing about your surroundings. You just have to have your heart in the right place, right? Not like the heart talk when you were a kid, but your heart with the kingdom of God, right? You have to seriously consider that. And of course, we're entering into that time is coming where we're going to have daily, if not more than, multiple times a day, we're going to have problems with our atmosphere and inbound objects, right? These clusters that sentiment has been echoed for a long time is very close, meaning it's within distance now that a count, right? An actual forecast, if you will, of what the density will be like for the earth. They're being tabulated. They're being looked at. Strategies are being put together. You will see people in military bases up and move. They're going to reposition themselves. At this point, they don't really care. Under the guise of war, they could do this. right? But if I were you, I would stay focused on everything God talked about and try not to drift off into what seems logical, right? Like some of these storms. I think God gives us examples of these things that can pop up without warning. These storms that we're having they're incredible. They're amazing. Amazing, not because they're mild and, they look pretty. No. Amazing because the conditions in which they're forming, we've not had before. We've just not had these before. For example, today on the East Coast, expect some really heavy storms. Really heavy storms. They're forming out of nowhere. Storms are pretty strong. Thunder cells are starting to form within, one was recorded forming within about 20 minutes. And it was with no activity for miles around, right? I think about 271 miles, everything was clear. All of a sudden, within about 20 minutes, a strong thunder cell formed. There was flood damage. There was also lightning damage again, and lightning is going to become a super problem. You guys, well, we'll discuss some of that tonight because there are going to be types of super discharges. It's the best way I can put that so you understand it, meaning sustained discharges of lightning. They sustain themselves, but they also move and reach out to different locations as this is happening. Right. For example, in several places today, lightning hit the ground. That lightning traveled in the ground. It left veins that were visible by the space station. But the lightning traveled in the ground for about, I think it was about 109 miles in many different directions. It looked like roots were instantly growing in the ground, burned up the grass, vitrified some of the soil. That was through lightning today with no rain, no cumulonimbus, no anything. Our density in the atmospheres is increasing. Lightning potentials will double. Yet again, they doubled before. They're going to do it again, which means lightning is going to become very dangerous, right? Very dangerous. Side note, if you're in a storm or a storm's approaching, do not take chances like you used to. Don't do that. Yes, we believe in the Lord. Yes. He ultimately controls everything. Mankind is, they're starting to break down the seams. Several operations have failed. You guys may not know about this, but often because of economies, they try to maneuver or seed certain weather conditions. It's just not been happening. The atmospheres are overwhelming what they have developed. And by the way, to change the weather, right, that begins underground, not above ground, underground. The process begins underground, not above ground. The weapons, the tools, the technology is about 390 to 700 feet below you. It's not above ground, it's below ground, right? They had to be isolated from the atmosphere in order for it to work. They have counterparts in space, and all they do is monitor and adjust some of the emissions that take place in the Earth. But, as I said before, the atmospheres are beginning to overwhelm just about everything. Strange things in the atmospheres. And you guys remember we were talking about the radiation increase. When you have density increases in the upper atmosphere, aircraft have to fly at lower altitudes. Or else what? Or else pilots get exposed to more radiation. Radiation being cumulative, meaning their radiation count does not go down, right? It's not like it's not like alcohol, where your body purges and you no longer have alcohol in your system. No, radiation stays in your system. And once you absorb too much, you cannot fly. You can't go into the upper atmospheres anymore. Well, we talked about this a while back, didn't we? And if you can interpret things correctly, right, isn't it amazing how that we're having increased discharges of lightning? The sun is very volatile in very strange ways. that have not been observed by the average person. Those things are happening. More and more particulates are pouring into our universe from outside of the heliosphere. The sun itself is doing the same, and then at the same time, you have a pilot shortage. Isn't that interesting? That you would have an issue with pilots flying. At the same time, you have upper atmosphere radiation increases all across the board. Interesting, isn't it? Sometimes, well, often, things are right in plain sight. If you stay calm about situations, if you can compare them to the biblical narrative, you won't drift in your conclusions, right? You won't. The Bible is an anchor. It's a very good anchor, right? Everything else is, subject to change. Man does not know how it's going to change, and their conclusions to date have all been wrong. All of them. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's that they follow trending, and trends are not forecasting as well as they want them to. The weather is not predictable like mankind is, right? It's just not. And twice we've had a storm, one storm system that spanned the U.S., and it spanned Europe, and it spanned Canada twice this year. This winter, this winter's going to be rough. For those of you who trust the Lord, keep trusting in the Lord.